Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the October 22nd, 2025 special town meeting. This fall special town meeting will be held at 7 p.m. at the Oak Middle School auditorium, and town meeting members' packets will be mailed out on Friday, October 10th. Members of the public and town meeting members would also be able to access their entire meeting packet off of the town website, which is shrewsburyma.gov/special town meeting. So there's 8 warrant articles that will be considered by town meeting, and those warrant articles will also be reviewed thoroughly in a public hearing by the Finance Committee, which will happen at 6 p.m. on Thursday, October 9th. So without further ado, let's dive into the warrant, and we'll start with Article 1. Article 1 is to adjust the fiscal year 2026 operating budget. This article proposes to make specific adjustments to the current fiscal year's budget, which is 2026, and there are quite a few changes that we are proposing. So I'll introduce Alex Martinez, who is the town's Director of Budget and Financial Planning. Alex, can you talk about those adjustments that we're going to make to the operating budget and what's changed since the annual town meeting in May?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Carr. So in the spring, town meeting approved an operating budget of $161,356,042, which consists of the school and municipal expenditures, as well as shared operating support and debt service. The operating budget accounts for 85% of the total spending plan for the town, which is just over $189 million for FY26. Since the annual town meeting in May, several financial factors have changed to allow for the proposed adjustments, including increased new growth of approximately $295,000. New growth reflects taxes from any new or renovated property added to the tax rolls. Additionally, the town is expected to receive an additional $757,000 in state aid, which includes Chapter 90 roadway improvements and other revenue from the state budget that was finalized in June after town meeting. Additionally, state and county charges and offsets were reduced by about $92,561, reflecting a reduction in charges that were anticipated through the state budget. This results in a net new available revenue of $959,567, which is all recurring revenue. With the additional revenue available, we're asking town meeting to consider a few adjustments. The largest adjustment is an increase in funding within the retirement budget. The retirement budget consists of the town's obligation to cover pension benefits for former and current employees, as well as other post-employment benefits, which consist of health insurance for retirees. Article 1 proposes to increase the pension line in the retirement budget from $2.3 million to $2.8 million. Since achieving fully funded status as of January 1st, 2021, the funding ratio has backslid, and the pension system is currently funded at a 95.6% on an actuarial basis and 93.4% on a market valuation basis as of January 1st, 2025. This proposed adjustment moving forward would bring the funding ratio to 100% by 2030. The second proposed adjustment is an increase in funding for the tax title program within the Treasurer Collector's Office budget. This adjustment is approximately $7,000 and is necessary due to changes in state law for notifications related to tax title properties. The new state law places a greater emphasis on notifying delinquent taxpayers and requires additional steps and methods for notification. The third proposed budgetary increase is $10,000 within the Highway Department budget to cover costs that may be incurred related to the maintenance of private roadways bylaw that was passed at the May 2025 annual town meeting. This bylaw amendment enables minor repairs and improvements to private ways within the town if the repairs are deemed a public necessity. There are 13 miles of private roads in town that could be eligible for necessary repairs, and these costs would fund materials and equipment needed to make these repairs. Article 1 also proposes to make $155,000 in interdepartmental transfers across 6 different town departments. These transfers will not have any impact on the bottom line budget and reflect the movement of funds between salary lines and operating expense lines, which requires town meeting authorization. The details of these transfers, which are significantly driven by staff recruitment and retention challenges, will be further outlined in the town meeting materials that are sent out. With all of these adjustments considered, the net increase to the operating budget would be $517,000, which is about 0.32% of the FY26 budget. Moving on to Article 2, this also proposes to make budget adjustments, and this adjustment would be to the Solid Waste and Recycling Enterprise Fund. Enterprise funds are voted on and appropriated outside the operating budget, so this adjustment is considered as a separate article. Mr. Midgard, can you provide an overview on this proposed adjustment?
Sure. So, as you noted, this proposed an adjustment within the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 26, and those activities are associated with collecting and disposing of solid waste and recycling from residential properties within the community. There are a few challenges unique to the development of fiscal year 26 budget that we need to overcome here at the fall special town meeting. One of those challenges is a lower than anticipated retained earnings. Within enterprise funds in Massachusetts, the term retained earnings is basically the fund balance that's available at the end of any given year's business activities. So you take into consideration the total revenue that was raised and the total expenditures that were made, and any positive or negative differences provide you with retained earnings or assets of the business fund itself. So during fiscal year 25, we actually had lower than anticipated revenues, and we expended the budget completely as it was set forth through town meeting. So that left us short at the end of fiscal year 25 with a negative retained earnings balance. That means that we don't have any additional funds to carry forward to the FY26 budget, which we were anticipating the use of $200,000 in retained earnings. So immediately we need to make up a budget deficit from FY25 and account for revenues that of $200,000 that aren't available for fiscal year 26. So the fiscal year 26 solid waste budget was set at $3,658,841, and about 50.4% of the budget was being funded through the tax levy. Article 2 seeks to reduce the estimated revenues from bag fees by approximately $385,000 and increasing the amount of the tax levy that's subsidizing the program. And we're also decreasing expenditures by another $160,000. Those changes in total, reducing the total amount of money that we plan to spend and increasing the amount of money that's coming from the tax levy versus what is coming from revenues from the program itself, will make the adjustments. So those changes would bring us into balance for the fiscal year. There's been moderate decline in bag sales year over year. We've seen additional increasing recycling costs, additional increased recycling since the implementation of single stream recycling in July of 2024. We've also implemented a food waste composting program, and we do know that some residents are choosing to go with private haulers versus the town's haulers. And those things combined have led to that decrease in the total number of bag sales, which does influence the amount of revenue that we are collecting for the program. So we're making these changes early within the fiscal year to be able to ensure that we have a balanced budget this year, and we'll have to make additional changes potentially to the rates in the future. But again, it's our recommendation that we make these adjustments now so we don't have concerns at the end of the fiscal year that we have to deal with at that time. So we don't anticipate this being an ongoing issue. We'll make adjustments to rates in the future to make sure that we, again, can move closer towards that ideal, which is 50% of the funding coming from the tax levy and 50% of the funding coming from the revenue of the program itself, which is primarily generated through the sale of blue bags.
Thank you very much for that overview on Article 2. Article 3 proposes to adjust the FY26 Capital Improvement Plan budget. Can you walk us through what additional capital investments town meeting members will be asked to consider?
Absolutely. So there's one item that we're looking to purchase and add to the fiscal year 26 capital improvement plan, and that is the purchase of an ambulance for the fire department in starting up our own EMS program. So this article proposes to make amendments to that capital plan by transferring $250,000 in the funds that were approved for fire apparatus replacement fund towards the purchase of that ambulance, along with the appropriation of an additional $290,000 in free cash. So the total cost of the ambulance is $540,000, and we're proposing that appropriation through this article. So many residents or town meeting members will likely have questions about the EMS program itself. And we are in the process of developing the long-range financial model, understanding the revenues that will be generated from running an ambulance service through the act of billing insurance companies, Medicare and Medicaid, and patients for the cost of care associated with emergency medical services. That is a work in progress. We need to ask town meeting's consideration for the acquisition of this ambulance now, because there's up to a 2-year lead time for the construction and equipping of the ambulance. So in order to get an EMS program off the ground, we want to take this as an initial first step, but we will be able to answer questions associated with how the program itself and the financials, staffing, and operating a model itself will work once we implement the program. But this article in and of itself only seeks to acquire, purchase, and equip the ambulance. So that takes us beyond the one capital improvement change to Article 4, which is transferring fiscal year 24 opioid funds from free cash to the special revenue fund. Alex, would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. So Article 4, as you mentioned, proposes to transfer $310,854 in opioid settlement funds from free cash to the opioid special revenue fund. These funds were received between August 2023 and May 2024 from the state settlements and flowed to free cash. And so now we can move them from free cash to the opioid special revenue fund that was established at the May 2024 annual town meeting. So this is just a little bit of a cleanup article to get those funds to where they should be so that they can be used appropriately.
Actually, I think it's a somewhat similar situation, recurring financial transaction that we have to make through Article 5. Would you talk a little bit about what's needed there?
Yes. So Article 5 proposes to appropriate $30,383.40 that the town was eligible to receive from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund for the 834,000 rides that originated in the town during calendar years 2023 and 2024. These funds are received annually, and we typically appropriate them in the fall every couple of years just to, again, get them to where they can be so they can be used appropriately. These funds can be used for sidewalk, crosswalk, and pedestrian mobility initiatives to promote alternative modes of transportation. And since the inception of this fund in 2016, the town has received just over $80,000.
Great. Article 6 is an article to deal with prior year bills of the town. Is there any action that will be taken on this article, Alex?
At this time, Article 6 is just a placeholder on the warrant to authorize payment of bills incurred in prior fiscal year. As of this writing, there are no prior fiscal year bills to be paid, and if there are none that are considered that we need to consider leading up to the special town meeting, we would recommend that town meeting defeat this article. Article 7 is a citizen's petition, and citizens' petitions can be brought forward by residents and members of the community. For a special town meeting, 100 signatures are required from registered voters in town, and we did receive one citizen's petition. Mr. Mizikar, could you walk us through what this petition is about?
Sure. So Article 8, the petition proposes to authorize the select board to petition for special legislation to allow a question regarding the addition of fluoride to the public water supply. So special legislation is required because the general laws state the authority for adding fluoride to the drinking water system is held by the Board of Health. And anytime the Board of Health would make any changes to that, a referendum would be required. So absent of changes by the Board of Health, special legislation is being sought to compel the community to have a referendum, a town-wide referendum on this. Additional details will be provided at town meeting and at the Finance Committee public hearing by the lead petitioner. Article 8 is the final article that's on the warrant, and we have Keith Baldinger, Assistant Town Manager for Operations, here with us today as well to talk about that. Article 8 is to fund the feasibility study for the high school addition and renovation. So, Keith, thanks for being here, and can you talk a little bit about what's proposed through this warrant article?
Sure, thanks. As you said, this article seeks funding to begin a feasibility study for the renovation and expansion of Shrewsbury High School. This represents Module 2 of the Massachusetts School Building Authority Major Building Program. You may recall that we entered Module 1 in May town meeting. We're requesting the appropriation of $3 million to cover the cost of this phase. The MSBA will contribute to this study through their grant program with a reimbursement rate of approximately 52%. The feasibility phase includes both an educational programming study and a building infrastructure study. Together, these efforts will help determine the best approach to meet the long-term educational and facility needs of the high school. The proposed funding model includes $1.5 million from free cash and a $1.5 million borrowing authorization. It's important to note that the borrowing authorization is required even though the MSBA provides the reimbursement. The MSBA requires that the town demonstrate it has appropriated 100% of the estimated cost of the module before moving forward. However, the town expects to leverage the reimbursement process and the state grant funds, meaning we will likely never actually need to borrow those funds. Those who recall our previous MSBA projects, such as the Oak Middle School window and door project and the Beale Elementary School project, may remember that we used this same approach successfully at both times.
Great. So, Keith and Alex, we certainly appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk about all 8 of the warrant articles that will be on the October 22nd, 2025 special town meeting. Again, echoing the advice of the Finance Committee, we strongly encourage town meeting members and other residents who may have questions about any of these warrant articles to come to the Finance Committee's public hearing. It, again, is on October 9th, Thursday at 6 p.m. here in the Town Hall in the Select Board meeting room. Everyone would have the opportunity to ask questions about any of the warrant articles to the Finance Committee and town staff, and the lead petitioner of the citizens petition will be in attendance that night to be able to answer those questions. Again, October 22nd, the special town meeting will begin at 7 p.m. at the Oak Middle School, and residents will, town meeting members will receive their packets sometime early in that week the week before that, because packets will be mailed out on Friday, October 10th. So thanks for taking the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the special town meeting. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to our office at manager@shrewsburyma.gov. Have a great day.